Hi everyone, thank you very much for coming to this Doers to Doers. So as you know, Doers to Doers is a conversation between an entrepreneur who has been through something that you are currently worrying about, an expert that has coached several startups on the subject and that is ready to bring theory to whatever Michael that we have here is going to say. So here we have Michael. Michael, you are the founder of Jebbit. Jebbit is now, there is like 120 people working at Jebbit right now, is that correct?
Just about 100, yeah.
Yeah, just about 100. Fantastic. And Jonathan, you are an expert at the HEC Incubator, and you have coached several startups, and one of your really like go-to subject is scaling.
Correct.
Yes. So fantastic. I have all right. Okay. So this event is going to be a conversation. Hi to people online. Feel free to like jump in the comments. Tell us where you are from. What is your company stage, so that we can like tailor whatever we're gonna have to say to your needs. So before we begin, I have first questions for the audience that you can prepare. So I will ask them first questions, but you can start thinking. I need to know what you are doing. I need to know what is your stage, and probably my main question is what is worrying you so much about scaling, and we're going to address just that. So before we begin, I would like to start. To let, of course, Michael and Jonathan present themselves. Michael, you said that the reason why you are talking about scaling right now, and one thing that really struck me when you were talking about your experience is that you were saying that scaling is not like this. It's not going from 0 to 100. It's a 12-year-old journey. And there has been ups and downs, and so there's a whole idea behind the idea of scaling that you kind of want to break.
Definitely. Not a flat line. It's not an exponential curve. I think most of us know that by now if we're building something. But yeah, my journey started about 11 years ago while I was in school. And you mentioned me as the founder. I should say it is a team sport.
Yes.
Many co-founders along the journey, most of which were classmates in college. And so my journey has been majority downs and then like big ups that kind of like take you to the next phase. And so we might talk about that a little bit. But yeah, it's been 11 years of one software company's journey.
So, okay, fantastic. Yeah. Well, we're happy to hear about it. Jonathan, you have coached several startups in the HEC Incubator,
yeah.
And you have just met Jonathan. Actually, and we have already talked a little bit about it.
Yes.
And when we were talking about scaling, you were saying something that was really interesting, in my opinion, is like your ability to scale is going to be both a combination of how you are able to solve problem externally for your customer, are you able to solve the right problem, and solve problem internally so that it does not limit your growth.
Correct. So you want me to speak to that a little bit? So thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here. And hi, guys. It was good to meet. I had a chance to talk to Jean and Tanya about their businesses a little bit, and hopefully I'll get to learn more about the rest of your businesses. So the thing is, when you start a business, you have to be slightly crazy because you're signing up for a non-stop flow of solving problems. The first thing when you start a company, you start a business, whatever, there's maybe a few reasons why anyone would start a business. Either like you have an itch that no one's scratching and you got to figure out how can I do this, right? Is there no one out there doing that? And then you find there's other people with that problem, that itch. So you got to solve that problem. So that's like solving a market problem, right? And then you got to solve that for whoever your target market is. So that's solving one level of problem. Then you're going to solve how you're going to get it out there, how you're going to produce it. But as you begin to sell more of whatever the solution is, you learn that you're not able to do it all by yourself. Then you got to solve the problem of recruiting. Then you got to solve the problem of financing, of product management. There's always a problem to solve. So scaling is really an exercise of getting better at solving problems internally or externally for your clients or internally for your team. And I would say, as you scale, you have to kind of let go of the main problem, which is letting go of your ego and really become into a place of, I would say, service and figure out like how are we going to do this? Because as you scale to the success of Michael and his co-founders, and maybe you can speak to this, like there's a point where you're just like, this isn't about me anymore. It's about a bigger vision and a bigger mission. And if you feed that, then you attract the right people that are smart, that are brilliant, that will like attach to that vision that you have, that idea. And they'll solve problems that you can never do. And that's where the magic happens, I think. What do you
Yeah, I
think?
mean, we'll definitely go in at some point, and you can kind of lead when we get into this, but there's a point in the founding journey, and a lot of, I definitely want to turn it back to this group to understand what types of businesses, what stage are you all at, but there's a point as a founder where, and you experience this many times, I'm sure, but you lose control. And as a founder, you're kind of control obsessed. Like if you're crazy enough to start a company, you really like controlling your destiny and bringing to life what you think should be in the world. And then there's this point at different stages, you know, you hit 10 people, you hit 25 people, you hit 50, you hit 100, and you're progressively losing control. And along that journey, you have to learn that one, you can't control anything. And the second piece is you need that team. And the foundational piece is the team. And I mean, we could spend this entire time talking about team and how to build a great team, because at the end of the day, there's kind of nothing else that matters. If you don't have that foundational team element, pretty much everything breaks alongside the business. So you can have the pricing right, the product right, but if the team is wrong, nothing else really matters. So
That's very interesting because when we were mentioning scaling, so in scaling you have different areas. You have scaling your team, scaling your business, scaling like the sales, like you need to sell more. We also talk a lot about funding. And when we were preparing, we were saying how like funding can be like the wrong thing to look at because like, and I have hesitated as well, like how to present Jebbit. Do I say that they have already raised 100 million or do I say that they are 120 or more, it will be more than 100 now. And my first go-to was to talk about, of course, how much they raised because that's kind of like the metric that we used. And then after our conversation, I was like, no, let's make it like team-oriented because this is what matters. That's very interesting. Thank you. So before we head out to you now, there is a few things that I want to tell you. First of all, we are talking to a very diverse audience. So we have 40 people online, and some of them are from Côte d'Ivoire, some of them are from Romania, some of them are from Korea, but they are in France right now, and I know that because I know them. Hi. Hi to the camera, not hi to the computer, of course. So now we're going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your business. Of course, online, feel free to tell it, and I will make sure that I am your voice today, and I will make my best in doing so. For the people that are in the audience, Emma is going to come with a mic, and so can you, like, who wants to start with where you are, what are your worries about scaling?
There's no worries. They got it all figured out. They just want to make sure we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jerome. I'm a founder in a startup that in the beverage industry. So my question is, so I've just started, but my question is, when you scale, how do you remain, in a sense that you keep the same culture? You know, you don't lose your, the values of the companies. And about hiring, like how do you, what are the people that you're looking for, and how do you keep it all together?
Can you repeat your name and your industry, please?
Jerome.
Jerome, and
Yep.
which industry?
Beverage.
What's that?
In beverage?
A beverage, okay.
Yep.
Got it. And what does your company do?
Sorry?
What does your company do?
So basically, we are distributing a beverage in Paris. And so we just came up with a new product. So my question is, now I need to hire people. And the question is, how do I hire the right people to scale the business?
Okay. So I've only been doing this for about 26 years, and I've had a few years experience. I had about 3 years in Silicon Valley, most of my time on Silicon Valley, LA, and San Diego. The last 2.5 years here in Paris. But it's interesting, across industries, across companies, across cultures, what I've come to realize is there's only one thing that matters, and that is that you how do I put this? Okay, let me tell you about the big mistake I made, and then what I learned from it, and then how I switched to it now. So we had a fast-growing company in the real estate industry, and it still exists. And I had to hire fast because we were growing fast, and I was running out of, again, going back to the problem-solving issue, I realized I can't solve all the problems myself, and there are certain areas of the business that I didn't have the brain for it. I needed smart people. So I started putting out ads, and I started recruiting people, and I started looking at resumes. I was like, okay, they have all the skills. Bring them in for an interview. Okay, and I just focused like the skills. I was like, you're hired. Next one, you're hired. So like within a week, I hired 7 people, or 8. And then we had a meeting. It's okay, now you know your jobs, your product, your marketing, your this, and your sales, and any problems, you come see me, and then we were off to the races. About a month into it, everything kind of like, it was weird. Nothing made sense. I was like, well, okay, so you're fired, you're in, you're fired, let's do it again. And for a while, I just kept hiring for skill, and then I was hoping that the characters of the people that I was hiring would get along. So I was looking at it the wrong way. I had like what I call the false idol. The idol I was looking for is like growth and revenues, which means that's all I'm going for. I wasn't thinking I was building a culture. I wasn't thinking I was building a place where people are going to spend 8 to 10 hours a day. People have to get along. I wasn't thinking about vision, mission, core values, any of that. I was thinking about, let's go. Like, I'm onto something, let's go. So that took me about 3 years to figure out. A lot of heartache, a lot of pain, and a lot of unnecessary mistakes and firing that shouldn't have happened. So I switched it around. I said, let me see if I can interview for character, look for certain character traits on their resumes, and then hopefully if they have the right character, meaning they connect with what the company vision and mission is, they connect with the values that we have, they connect with where we're going with this, they have what seems to be a good foundation for good work ethic, good problem solving skills. Then if I bring that in, I can train all the technical stuff. So that was a big switch, and that my point is, like, if you hire for character, and character has a lot of things that goes underneath that banner, you're better off to have a team that has good character, that buys into your vision and your core values, and then from there develop the skills that it takes to solve the problems internally and externally. That's my take.
Can I ask you a question? And it's off the backs of what you were saying, because I completely agree, and I can tell you some of my experience, but why do you get up in the morning? What makes you excited to build what you are building?
Yeah.
Jerome? Oh, you don't have the mic.
We're gonna have the mic so that you guys online can listen to it.
Yeah, so I really feel like in my industry, we pollute a lot. And since I'm in the B2B business, I distribute to professionals, to restaurants, and so on. So we use what we call, bottles that is reusable. So basically, we deliver to our customers, then we collect them, and then we, refill them, and we distribute back to the customers. So I think that's a model that should be replicated even to the B2C market. So that's what really drives me. Like, there's a lot of opportunity, and I think that's I like the product, and I think that's something that I want to push. So yeah, awesome. That's what motivates me.
So there's a passion with the outcome of being successful in the specific problem you're solving. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, I want the product to be more accessible
Gotcha.
to everyone. Yeah.
Cool. So I asked the question because I went through the same journey with my co-founders in the early days, where we really struggled with some of the early hires. And looking back, anything that didn't work out, these were exceptional people. Like, they were very good at what they did and their specific skills, but the issue is we just hired the wrong fit of intangibles. So there's hiring for skills, and then there's hiring for DNA and someone's why. And I think that's the big piece of it, where you know what drives you and what gets you out of bed in the morning, right? Like, I am passionate about solving this problem in the world and making this a reality. And if you surround yourself with people who are driven by the same or similar things, you're much more likely to be successful than if you just go for, this is someone who's worked in the beverage industry for 15 years, knows how to get into Pepsi, Coca-Cola, et cetera, understands distribution, and can make this happen, right? How big is your company at this point, people-wise?
So at the moment, we are 4.
4 people.
Yeah,
okay.
With me, we're 5 included. Yeah.
And so I've found when you're hiring for a resume or a skill set or experience, for example, they're great when you're at scale phase. You figured it out, you figured out all the problems, and now we need to go make it happen, right? When we were 4 people or even 25 people, it's much more like why you're here and why you exist. And so what really shifted for me, and one of the people is in this room right now, Jackie, was one of the earliest members of our team. And those teammates who worked out, who have been here 5, 6, 7 years in Jackie's case, were the ones who were aligned to why I was so passionate about building this business. And they felt more like co-founders than they were employees. And so the interview was less of, what have you done? I don't think I even knew what the heck Jackie did at Adobe before she came to Jebbit. But I knew that she wanted to build something incredible. She wanted to build a team. She wanted to build a culture. It was more about the mission of how do we build a company with a scrappy group of people who don't know what the heck they're doing. And I started surrounding myself with people totally aligned to that mission. Very different than, hey, I want to bring interactive content and collect data in the right way, which is more of what our business does. No one really cared about that. Like, people weren't actually aligned to what the business did, but we all had the same core, like, we want to build a special company and be part of an entrepreneurial journey. And so there's this entrepreneurial DNA where people literally start businesses while they are full-time at Jebbit, because that's just kind of how we are all wired. So that was a big learning for me. And like my interviews, I haven't looked at a resume in 8 years. I don't even know what people do. I just sit down and have a human conversation and see where the connection is. But
Okay, so I would say that the first piece of advice of this doors to doors would be when selecting the people that are going to get to be around you for your skill journey, you don't want to look especially for experience. You don't even want to look especially for like certain like hard skills, but what you're going to look for are connections. But what you are going to look for is really having someone that shares the DNA. You're going to want to hire different people, but all of these people need to adhere to the vision that you were talking about. Like, having a vision is how you attract people that are smarter than you, and like they share the same DNA. DNA could being defined as what makes you want to wake up in the morning. Yeah. Okay.
good summary.
Fantastic. Does anyone have another question? No? All right. I have questions. I have questions about, okay, where exactly do you, how do you make decisions? Like, how do you, or maybe that's a question for later, but you said, Jonathan, the reason why I'm thinking about this question is because you said that there was a very precise connection between having the ability to choose the people that are right for your business and having the ability to solve problems externally for your customers. So I kind of want to like go into sales now, because of course when you're hiring, it means that you have to answer a demand. So when is a good time for hiring? Does this, okay, we say team first, but do the sales need to scale first?
I mean, I'm biased, so yes, I'm a big believer in selling. So my definition of selling is very simple. It's one word. Like, selling is solving. That's it. Like, you guys are sitting in a bunch of couches and chairs. At some point, this room was empty, and they needed to bring furniture in here, right? Nothing happens until someone sells something. It's that simple. You have a vision, you have a dream, you have a mission, you got to sell that. You have a product, you got to sell that. People are always buying, so it's your job to sell. Now, I know. Selling has a crappy reputation. You think about the used car salesman. You think about the people that try to sell you stuff you don't want. You think about the people that call you during dinner. They want to sell you, better cell phone plan or meet over the phone, whatever. I know. That's a view of sales that exists. I'm okay with that because those guys exist. When I say selling, think about solving. You're solving something very specific for a marketplace, right? So for me, when you're starting out, it's everyone has this vision of that growth that is up to the right, yeah. Up to the right, right? And if you look at any company that's gone, especially SaaS, that's what I enjoy and I specialize in, is when you get into SaaS, you look at that growth where they go from like a couple 100,000, close to 1 million. When you hit 1 million, That's really when you're like, okay, I have a viable product. I have something here rather than nothing. And then you want to go to 3, 5, 10 million a year in ARR, right? Well, when you want to go from, say, 1 million to 10 million, you're going from having a viable product that the market has validated to becoming a viable company. And that journey is very different. I think I could draw it, actually. Would that be okay?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I have.
Do we have?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, you have everything. That's
It's like a cooking show. I
fantastic.
came prepared with my own ingredients.
I knew that I had to draw this, so I came prepared.
Well, okay. I'll have the mic over the side.
Yeah, of course. I can wait for you.
So this is what everyone's looking for, right? Is this the camera here? This is what everybody knows, right? So this is about year 1, this is about year 5, and this is year 10, right? So year 1 is pretty much founder-led growth. You're hustling, you're doing, you have an idea, right? Michael, you're out there, you have an idea, you're like, man, I really believe in this. I'm selling beverages, I'm getting into fashion, I'm getting into food, in Jean's case, right? He just started in January. So you're in here, you're like, I'm hustling, I'm selling. And then you gotta go from here to over here, and people think that this ride right here is still like this. But let me show you what it's actually like. This ride right here in the middle, let me zoom in, it's more like this.
That's why they call it the messy middle.
The messy middle, exactly, thank you. The messy middle, and this is where you're figuring out, from selling perspective, what's my ideal client profile? What are we solving correctly? What features do we need? And like, I'm working with a startup right now for the last year in Station F, and this is kind of where we're at. Like, we just had a breakthrough the other week, and we started selling a lot more. We had some good sales, but before that, we were down here. So you're kind of going up, going down. And then there's a breakout, and you go back to over here. And this is where you kind of figure out your main, like, okay, this is the team, this is the values, these are the core values. But the core values have to be set up along the way, because this is messy and this is hard. And if people are doing it just to make money, they're going to leave, because everyone needs a home. Everyone needs to feel a sense of purpose and why they're there. So if they have a sense of purpose in the messy middle, like Michael pointed out, they'll stick through it. Your job as a founder, as a leader, is to keep that heart alive. Keep that going, keep it going, keep it going. And that, to me, is incredibly hard work. And that's something you can't hire out, and that's what keeps us up at night as founders.
That 1 to 5 year messy period is where being surrounded by a team who shares your why becomes so important, because if it's like, hey, I'm here to just do the next job, for example, or I've been in beverages and this is my next job in beverages, when things go wrong, which is inevitable, like it will happen, things will go wrong, there will be a terrible day you will never forget, and we have like 3 or 4 of those, and it's like, how does the team react when that happens? If they're just there for the resume or the next thing in beverages, they're probably gone pretty soon. But if their why is to build something incredible with a team, for example, or they're aligned to this mission, then that really doesn't matter. So that's the other piece that's, I think, I wish I knew going into the journey, and I know we're going a little off topic with sales, we'll come back to it. I wish someone told me before going into the whole process that you're just going to fail for 10 years. Like, how liberating is that? You will fail for 10 years. It'll
There's
feel
no
like
failure, right? There's feedback. So I think when we hit those points, and looking back now, I'm like, okay, I failed a lot, but I failed forward, but I also had some successes. But if you look at failure as a stop, as like, oh shit, sorry, can I curse here? Is that okay?
This is a family show, Jonathan.
It's a family show. Gosh darn it. Oh man, I failed, I missed the mark, or we're out of money, I can't make payroll, and oh my God, I'm so ashamed. I can't get up again, you know. Those things are gonna happen, but if you look at it as feedback, and you put yourself aside, and you're like, this isn't about me right now, I'm supposed to figure this out. Again, back to problem solving, right? I'm supposed to figure this out. So you look at these points of feedback points, I would say. Yep. And I don't know, did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No.
Because I have a question. Can I ask him a question real quick?
Of course.
Thank you. Because I don't know the format too well. Because in the U.S., I don't know what the statistics are in France. Like in the U.S., like I think it's 87% of businesses fail within 5 years. and a lot more fail within 10 years. So the fact that you make it past 10 years, you're in the top 3-4% of businesses that start out, right? And I'm just wondering for you guys, like what happened in year 4 to 5, 3 to 5, somewhere around there? Like, was there a point where you were like, I'm out? Where you like seriously considered to like, I might actually just not do this? I don't want to put words. Was there? Yeah. What was that? And why'd you push through?
None that got to the point of like, I'm out of here. And I think that's because my co-founders and I had such a strong purpose behind everything that we were doing. And we were really close. I mean, we started it in college. Like we were in dorm rooms when we started it and we had a mission. So I never got to the point where it's like, this is happening, I'm out of here. But it was like all the time you're thinking, what am I doing right now? This is ridiculous. And I honestly, like, I think the reason teams can stick through it, this is true for myself and many others that I've seen, is just having the support system and the team around you where, you know, when I'm at a low, Tom, our CEO, is at a high, right? And Tom hit lows and Johnny's at a high. And like everyone's at highs and lows at different times and kind of pulling each other back in when it matters. And then, I mean, I can't tell you how many times my wife talked me off the ledge. Like, why are you talking like this? This is your dream. Like, this is what you want to do. Why, don't talk about going to the next thing or thinking this is a failure and crazy, because those thoughts enter. And so having that support system is huge, but then also reframing, like you were saying, reframing failure. I think it was something we did very quickly, not as failure. Like we label this thing failure. If you're at or graduated from HEC, like you are a competitor, you have a high standard for yourself, you've probably won a lot in your life to get to that point, and you're not really used to it, right? Like you didn't get many B's and C's in school, it was probably a lot of A's, and then all of a sudden you come into this startup world where people are saying no. When you start selling, 99% of those conversations are no's. When you start raising money, 99% of those conversations are no's. Your first customer, you lose them. Big no, big failure. Not a failure.
Such a heartbreak, man.
Yeah, it eats you, and you need a lot of it to then come out the other side and realize, wait a second, like this is not a failure. This is part of the process of learning and figuring out, like, where does what we are doing fit in this world? Because when you start, you have no idea. Like you have no idea. You have this idea in your head. You need to go test it. So, just reframing failure, I think, is another big piece.
Okay, fantastic. And as far as, so reframing failure means like taking the learnings from like people saying no and then using that to get better, and that will lead you to more sales and therefore will give you the power to scale. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I wish it was like that simple. Like, and then all of a sudden you're selling.
And then you sell. Yeah.
And I don't think this is
How do you keep selling?
True.
Yeah, I guess is my question.
How do you keep selling?
How do you keep selling for 12 years?
So it took us probably 8 years to break through, which is not common. But then again, we were 20 and 19 years old when we started, so there was a good deal of just growing up and understanding the world that needed to happen. So it was like 6 to 8 years of really struggling to figure out how to sell. And I think just the piece that kept us going was starting to focus less on top line revenue and focusing less on bookings goals and those numbers that VCs might put on you, for example, and instead just focusing completely on the customer. We were talking a little bit about this, but selling doesn't have to just be cold calling and pitches and deals that you close, but it can also just be spending a lot of time with customers and understanding what actually is the problem that I'm solving here? What is the real problem that exists in the world? And then what type of customer, you talked about ICP, ideal customer profile, who is that customer who resonates with that problem most consistently? Who is that customer where that problem burns the most extreme, right? And as you go, you start with this wide lens, and then you start to focus in, and you realize that actually, like, simple and focused is better than selling everything to everyone. So, I mean, that's a whole category of conversation in itself, of focus versus.
Yeah. Can I add to that?
Yes, of course.
So I don't know where you are in your stages in terms of your startup, but I think every startup I've ever worked with, they all want the same. They want to sell more faster. How can we sell more faster? And there's really just three things you need to do is really dial in your lead generation and lead graduation, meaning how do you get the leads and graduate them into like the right prospects. And in terms of SaaS, how do you keep increasing your average contract value over time? So you can kind of count on that and compound the value on that. And then how do you shorten your sales cycle? Like if you have those three factors dialed in, and underneath each one of those, there's a lot of sub-factors. For example, lead generation and lead graduation into the right prospect has a lot to do with your ideal client profile. Whenever I work with a startup, whether it's a 1-hour coaching session or we have a 6-month contract together, I spend an extraordinary amount of time on the ICP, the ideal client profile, because once you have this person figure it out, who they are, what their troubles are, what their challenges are, what it is that they want, what are their needs, what are their goals, what are their challenges, what's the narrative in their head, what are they worried about, what's their job, what's their position, who are they reporting to, what are the conversations they're having. You need to go deep. So when you really connect with that ideal client profile, now you know how to speak their language. And also, and this is where most startups don't do, most startups just think about how can I get them to buy my solution? How can I get them to buy that? So you stop thinking beyond your sale. You have to think beyond the sale, beyond the point when they buy from you, all the way to what does complete success look like for my ICP? What does a complete success look like? After they buy my solution, how is that going to help them realize their dreams? How is that going to get them closer? So when you speak to the big vision of what they want for their position, their job, their company, they see your solution as a piece of the puzzle. Like, why is this important to you? Why do you want this now? Why are you even considering this? Tell me more about that. Okay, so let's say you have a solution to this problem, whether you buy from me or somebody else. I really don't care. I want to know how this solution is going to help you realize whatever the big things you're trying to realize for your company, for your job. And then once they start dreaming big and they start seeing it and you take them there, this is a bit of a sales technique. Once you take them there, they'll remember you for that. They're like, okay, there's a saying, people forget what you say, what you do, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. Okay, so once you connect with them there and you connect their kind of big picture with your vision and your mission around your company, they'll be like, okay, there it is, there's the connection. It goes straight to their, what I call the reptile brain, right? The emotional connection there. And then they're more likely to actually consider buying the thing that you have. So what happened is you're no longer selling. You're just looking to convert buyers that are not buyers yet, right? So once you get into that point, I'm going off on a tangent here, but once you get into that, now you find a way to like systematize that. How do you speak about that? How do you write copy for that? How do you market for that? What are the hooks you're looking for there, right? Like one startup I worked with, they were constantly approaching it as like, we have all this data. We know this much about the consumers. We're checking 96 million data points across different industries, and you can't launch a product without it and all that. I go, well, what if they get this wrong? He goes, oh, I don't know. Well, we have the best data. I go, yeah, you keep talking about how great you are. What is it about your data that helps them? And I kept pushing him, He goes, well, do you know how much money is wasted on failed product launches? I go, no. But I bet that the people in head of marketing and product, they know how much they wasted last year. He goes, oh. I said, yeah, well, how much did you waste last year? 20 million, 30 million? How about you don't waste that for the next 12 months in your next product launch? There's the hook. There's the potential failure and the FOMO. And then he connected with that on that emotional level, and then it changed everything around their ICP and their copywriting.
I'm going to keep building on it. This is,
Yeah,
get
course.
ready. I know how this is going to go. What you're talking about was a realization for me, like a mental framework that came way too late in the game. If I said to this group, leading and lagging indicators, would you know what I'm talking about? Does anyone, leading and lagging? Yeah. What would be your definition of leading and lagging indicators?
I don't really have an example like that, but you can see an indicator that will show you what will be the trend, and after, for the lagging indicator, it just confirms the trend that just passed.
Yes.
So leading is indicating the trend and lagging is confirming the trend.
It's the outcome,
It's
right?
the outcome,
So,
yes.
so after everything has been done, what happens, right? That is your lagging indicator. And so when we're talking about how do you sell and how do you start to scale up sales, so many of us focus on kind of the end of that journey, right? Like, how much am I selling? That's the lagging indicator. The leading indicator is how do you sell? What are the motions that are most important to start to drive those sales? And many teams, including ourselves, we focus just on the lagging. Like what's the bookings number? How many meetings have we had? Just like the operational components of selling, and just like selling on its own. But a lot of us don't think of what leads to good selling, which is a lot of what Jonathan is talking about, which is how do I identify that pain, for example? How do I find that FOMO? And I don't think that comes without really spending time with these prospects and really listening when you lose a deal, for example. Why did I lose that deal? Those couple deals that do start to come in, really spending time with them to understand, like, why is this changing your business? What is kind of that hook? And that's where building your ideal customer profile gets so important. Figuring out how to sell and your positioning, for example, becomes so important. We just like skip a step a lot of times and go straight to like, I'm going to hire 5 salespeople and here's your script and this is how many people you reach out to a day. And then it fails, like almost all the time. Instead of really spending more time than you think you need, reverse engineering like why this thing should be purchased in the first place and who should be purchasing it. So leading and lagging indicators like that takes so much mind share when we're thinking about things these days. So
Fantastic. Okay. Of course, go ahead. You are allowed to
Thank you.
react.
No, just one more
Also,
thing
you
about
guys, you're allowed to react.
Yeah, one more thing about sales. So I live in France now for 2.5 years. My wife is from Paris. I lived 27 years in America and most of that in LA. So it's culturally, like I was born and raised in Denmark. I lived in Denmark, in Germany, the US, France. So I kind of see things differently. Like my brain connects a little bit differently with different cultures and different people. And when it comes to selling, I noticed that I guess the easiest way is like if you think, people always say focus on the pain, focus on the pain, focus on the pain. But let me ask you, if you and online and whoever's here, like when you have a headache, you take a what? What's the thing you take when you have a headache in France? What's it called? Doliprane, right? So everyone knows what to take for a headache. But if I ask you, you think back to the last time you had a severe headache, a migraine, you would have paid anything for a Doliprane just to get rid of the headache, right? But if I ask you, are you taking your vitamins? Well, vitamine, vitamins, who knows? Is that really proven to work? Who knows, right? I mean, I'm sure it's good for me, and I should probably take it, my vitamin D, COVID, all that. But no one really knows if vitamins pay off, right? So my question to you is, are you selling vitamins or are you selling painkillers? Are you selling vitamins that people like, yeah, I guess it's okay, but... Or are you selling a Doliprane in the moment? Where they're like, I can't, this thing, man, this is what comes back to your ICP. Understand the headache, and then you give them the Doliprane. So, okay, now that the Doliprane, your headache is gone. So for the US visitors, it's Tylenol, Advil. Now that I take Advil. it's not Valium or anything like that. So now your headache is gone, right? Now you can think straight. Like, are you interested in learning about, like, how often do you get your headaches? Oh man, every other week I get one of these migraines, I get these headaches. Okay. Well, now that you don't have a headache, what would it be like if you never had a headache again? Oh, yeah, that'd be so nice. And what would that mean to you? Well, I wouldn't spend a day having a headache. I would catch up with work. I'd be more present with my kids and my family. I don't want to have a headache again. Well, and I'm just making this stuff up right now. But there's actually 3 things you need to do to never have a headache again. Are you interested in that? Well, yeah, what is it? Well, you got to sleep well, you got to exercise, you got to eat well. Oh, great. Well, tell me about your age, and I'm going deeper into the personality now. Well, what if we design a program just for you and what you should eat, how to exercise, and make sure you sleep well? And then I can guarantee you in 3 months you'll never have a headache again. Is that interesting? Yeah. Well, we have a program, okay, and so on, and then you close, right? But the point is the Doliprane, the thing that you do in the moment removes the pain, and you say, I have a proof of value here, I can remove your pain. So if I'm delivering beverages to businesses, what's the pain there? What's the Doliprane moment that they go, okay, I get it. And then how do we make sure you never get a headache again? So that to me is like, make sure you're selling the painkiller, not the vitamins that no one really know if they work or not.
2018, someone came into our office and said, I really like this company, Jebbit, but I think you're selling a vitamin. So you just gave me like a big PTSD moment right there when we realized, oh my God, we are selling a vitamin. Like, we've got to figure this out. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting to see how how you have to connect on an emotional level both to your team and to your customers. And that reminds me of something that you said during the preparation, how like it all bounced back to like leading with your heart. And that was kind of like,
Going deep.
yes, going in a deep moment. But that's, I guess, like, what is it that you would like to say to an entrepreneur? Like, how to be guided by my heart? Like, kind of sounds like a Disney punchline, but it does have a sense. And how does it have a sense for you? And how have you seen it come to life in your company?
What part of the business journey do we want to focus on with that question?
Anyone, if you guys have anything like particular, or if you think maybe you can focus on like what would be the most useful to transmit. Like, what is the thing that people often look over, or maybe that you have looked over for all the time?
Let's see. So there's the heart piece, which we might get back to. The pieces you look over, which reminds me of our conversation. There's the heart piece, first of all, is just kind of like the foundation and the why, like knowing why you're in it, just having the expectations set for yourself of what you're getting into. If you're going in and saying, you know, I want to build a business and I want to get rich and do it as quickly as possible, like that's a recipe for failure, because I don't know if you noticed Jonathan's chart, but at the end of the chart, there was a number 10. And if you told me at the beginning of the journey that it would take 10 years, I would have been shocked. But in most cases, it's 5 to 10 years. Like, that's what you're signing up for. So really caring about what you're doing, I think, has to be at the core. And then, like we were talking about earlier, surrounding yourself with people who share that belief and that drive is super important. So that's kind of how you get through a lot of what you're going to confront. That's just inevitable. In terms of, I think when we talked about it, this is a total pivot. Les faux amis
We talked about les faux amis.
The piece you talked about. For anyone in America listening, like fake friends, direct translation. But like, what are the things that you kind of got wrong or fooled you? And since we're coming off of selling, like one of the things that I was thinking about after you asked the question, because I thought that was I've never been asked the question, like what are les faux amis in the process of building a company. I was like, whoa, wait, okay. That's basically the process of building a company, is just being surrounded by fake friends, so to speak. And we talked about fundraising, and like fundraising is a fake friend, like how much money you raise. And I'm glad you didn't mention the fundraising piece, because that kind of doesn't matter. That's fuel, but that's not the piece that matters. And revenue we always talk about, but it's about finding value and that ideal customer, for example. The piece, the third faux ami we didn't talk about that I was thinking about a lot in the week leading up to this was, finding that ideal customer and the fake friend for us, which was doing everything for everyone, right?
It's so hard to choose.
It's so hard to choose. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges. It's like, what direction do I go? Where do I actually focus? Everyone tells you focus is important, but it's so hard to do when you're confronted with that. I can't tell you how many offsites we did as a management team where it was like, all right, we're locking ourselves in a room, and before we come out of this room, we're going from 8 verticals we're targeting down to 2. And we left with 7. And it took like 5 years to whittle it down and finally figure that out. But like for us, the naivete was bigger is better, fancy, shiny, complex is better. And we sold this really big, complex vision, like declared data. It's going to give you everything you need to do for mass personalization, and you're going to do predictive modeling and this and that. And like this was just a huge vision. We sold it with a big price point. It's like, that's how you're successful in business. And that's kind of how you're always told. It's like the big shiny vision of the thing that's innovative and new. And after years of, figuring out, that kind of doesn't work, what was just so crazy and almost like disappointing was like the answer was the least sexy possible solution to it all, which we had to figure out because we had scaled up to $5+ million in revenue. We did it really quickly on big logos, complex vision, big $1 million contracts. And all of a sudden we lost half of them. Like half of our revenue was gone. And so that was the moment of like, oh no, this offsite, we're not coming out with anything less than focus. So we went into that offsite, and the big sexy vision not going to work, big contracts not going to work. And we just said, okay, what is most common across our actual successful customers? And I remember Jackie, who's sitting right here in the room, Jackie got up and did a presentation. I don't know if she even remembers this, but this was like the turning point in the business. She stood up in front of everyone and said, we ran the numbers, 70% of our successful customers start with a product finder, which if you go to a website is like, answer 5 questions and we'll show you the jacket for you, right? Someone's done that at this point. That is 95% of our business today. Really simple, almost like really, that's what you sell? And then we cut the price by 1/10, and we went after 2 specific verticals and just said, we're a quiz company. We're not this big declared data. We're a quiz company, something that simple.
So instead of asking, okay, here are all of the jackets that we have, which one do you want? It's more like, okay, tell us about you, and we're gonna give you the jacket.
And that was just the simple product. And it was like, within the next 2 years, we went from 3 to 10 million, and it just like took off. And all of a sudden, salespeople were able to sell because it was really simple, it was really focused, and it was at the right price point. And it was like, wait, what? That's all we had to do? Like, it was literally that simple. So back to like things that were unexpected. That was by far the biggest one for me. I couldn't believe it. So
Okay, good to know.
So the question is about leading with the heart?
Yeah.
bring it
Yeah,
back.
that was the initial question.
So there's a really good book out there that I recommend everyone reads because it speaks to the truth of the matter that we all have only 4,000 weeks to live. That's it. On average, 4,000 weeks. So what are you going to do with that time? You can do something that matters to you, something that really speaks to you, something that makes your heart sing, so to speak. Or you can worry about getting it right all the time and pleasing somebody else. And that's the drag, which means you have to make hard decisions, which means you have to say no a lot more than you say yes. And when you're starting a company and you're growing a company, just like you explained right now, you thought you needed to be this, but actually the market's saying it's much simpler, and then Jackie just nailed it and said, this is what everyone wants, so let's do that. But you have to go through that journey, you have to sit through that difficulty, and you have to be willing to have heart in all of it, and make the right moral choices. Sometimes it's not a strategic choice, sometimes it's not an obvious choice or a tactical choice. It's really just making the difficult decision, the hard, H-A-R-D, heart-based kind of decision. And it's not always popular. I think it was Jeff Bezos that says the key to his success is I have to be, how do you say it? I have a willingness to be judged and labeled wrong for a longer period of time than most other people because I really believe in what I'm doing. So he was willing to put out big ideas, big visions. Whether you like Amazon and him today, it doesn't matter. We're talking about what kept him going, which was basically I'm okay with being labeled wrong for a long period of time if in my soul of soul, my heart of hearts, if I really believe this is what we got to do. And that's the tough part. There's a lot of faux amis. There's a lot of seduction out there. There's a lot of people like, man, you're crazy. We can't go this way. We got to go this way. You got to do that. You know. But if you're the founder, you're the leader, and you have a strong vision, and you got to keep everyone on track for that, then that's what you got to do. It's not. I don't think it's being taught in business school, but there's a deep psychological, emotional component to this. That if all you have is 4,000 weeks, then why would you waste on anything but things that are meaningful to you?
Have you heard of the concept of time billionaires?
Time billionaires, no.
So it's basically the same premise, but I think you have 2 billion seconds in your life.
Okay.
Which is just a total reframe. I like the 4,000 because it's smaller.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, only 4,000.
Yeah.
But 2 billion seconds in your life, how would you spend those? And that's where it comes back to. I mean, we were talking the other day about you spend your whole life trying to make money so that when you're older, you can do whatever you want with your time. But then
That's
at
the
end of
American
your
way,
life-
yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'm speaking out of turn here in
No,
France,
it's
but
pretty much the same here.
I would say
You
my
could say.
experience
You
of being in France is that I feel like there's a healthy focus on like when I clock out of work, I clock out of work, and now I'm going to go hang out with friends. I'm going to go read a book. I'm going to go to the museum. I'm going to do things that kind of feed my soul. And there's yes, of course, everyone wants to make a ton of money, but I think there's more balance here than in the States. I mean, I lived in LA, La La Land, like everything's made out there, right? And everyone's chasing the big payday. Silicon Valley, same thing. But I feel like France and Europe, there's a groundedness that's pretty healthy. Which, if you go too far into that, you overanalyze things and you never take action, which you got to be careful with. So I feel like there's a Venn diagram here somewhere. I'm not going to draw it. You guys
balance.
get it. There's the U.S. and the French kind of like finding that balance. I think is a fun exercise.
Thank you very much. I have a question online about like when you make your team grow and what are like some of the pits that you are trying not to fall into. So Chiwon is asking, for now, I am a one-man company, but someday the organization will be getting bigger and there has to be bureaucracy or hierarchy things. I really hate those things. How about you and how did you adopt them?
I'll kick it off. One of our teammates has an interesting framework. She asked the question of the team, what's the difference between management and leadership? And I think when you go to school or you read management books, a lot of, before I went into management, which the first person I had to manage was when I was 23 or 24 years old, so I had no idea what I was doing. And like, what do the books and the schools tell you? You need to be tough, and you need to give hard feedback, and there need to be metrics, and you do performance plans, and one-on-ones are structured like this. And I just think that is like management. That's the black and white on paper managing an individual, and I take objection to some of those things. And instead, if you just reframe it and think about leadership, and how do you inspire this person? How do you give them a sense of why they are there? How do you give everyone within your team a sense of why the business could not possibly be successful without them? And it wasn't until we started doing that, and instead of just tactical management, thinking about leading and making sure everyone knew why they existed and organizing the team that way, that if you hire the right people and they're exceptional people, they're aligned with that mission, and you give them the why they exist, you don't really need to manage a whole lot. And you need to teach them a bunch, and there needs to be some structure for sure. But like cold, hard management and that being the only thing you do becomes less important than the leadership aspect. So that's where I kind of start, and it's soft and fluffy, and I don't know, it seems like, oh, you couldn't possibly scale a team with that mindset, but I feel like that's at the core, and as leaders and managers, we miss that a lot.
Yeah.
We just go straight to, what should I do with my day? How should my hours be spent? So
Yeah, this reminds me of an article that I've read from the product manager at Conto, who said that the title of the article is Process Don't Scale, Knowledge Does. And it was all about like, you cannot like transmit like processes because this doesn't work and people feel constrained. But when you teach them knowledge of the market, knowledge of the customer, then you give them that sense of them being able to organize their day in order to contribute to what is important in the company, which is like knowledge.
yeah, I think just to add on to that, I do think systems and processes become very important when you scale. When we're 100 people, and I'm learning that the hard way. I'm not good with process and systems. I'm not a detail person, and I'm learning from teammates that I've surrounded myself with who have complementary skill sets. They're very detail oriented, all about process, and they're putting these systems and these processes in place, which make life a lot easier. You do a little less like thinking. But I agree with you, in the early days, like the knowledge piece is really important. And I always thought training was, sit them down and just teach you how to do a pitch and how to run a quarterly business review with a customer and that sort of thing. And in reality, the best training was like the earliest members of our team just spent all of their time with us. Like we did meetings together, and we always did debriefs. Like the early managers on my team, I tell them, do a 30-minute call and schedule 15 minutes after to talk about why what happened on that call happened. And then they start to understand how you think. They can think independently. Things run a lot smoother. So yeah, that's how I build on that.
Good.
So what's the name of the person online?
Chiwon.
T1?
Chiwon.
T1. Okay. So T1, if you're just starting out and you're like a one-man or one-person band, you guys can visualize the one-person band. They're the ones with the guitar, the harmonica, the drum in the back, and then they're standing there singing, right? They're singing, they're going like, man, I have this song in my heart, I want to let it out, just listen to me, right? And maybe some people walk by and they go, hey, that's a pretty cool direction you're taking this music. You want someone to do the drum for you? You're like, yeah, you can do the drum, and then maybe you can do the guitar, and then all of a sudden you're going from a one-man band to like you're having a band and you have like a certain style that you want to put out there of music, right? And that's kind of what happened with startups. Like you're starting out on your own and you're doing everything, and I think in 2-1, in your case, I don't know how far in you're into it. If you don't like hiring, you don't like managing, don't make that your narrative that you don't want it, you don't like it. And guess what? You have to figure out some of it. You're going to have to figure out, like, you can't just stop your dream there. Like, I don't like management, so I'm going to stop this right now. One day I want to be a big band and play arenas, but really, I can't let go of my one band. I can't stop doing this because I'm afraid to figure out what it takes to hire the right drummer and all that. You got to push through that fear and just figure it out. You're in the business of figuring things out. Once you push through that fear, once you figure it out, then the question around leadership versus management, to me, leadership is like, what do we want to be? And management is like, how do we become that? Management is all about figuring out resources, time, money, planning, project management, things that I deeply appreciate, but I really suck at. I'm horrible at it. I can draw out an outline, but at some point I needed someone like a project manager, right? But in the beginning, I had to do all of it until I realized I was really depressed. And I was like, well, maybe it's time to let go. And we had money to hire, and you just got to go with that way. So leadership to me is what vision do we see in the future? What do we want to become? An existential thing, and management is like, how do we become that?
Thank you very much for answering. So it has been an hour already that we have been talking. Is there one last thing that you would like to share to the entrepreneur?
I feel we could keep going.
You're allowed to have one last thought, and then of course we're gonna have to close the live, and then of course after we can have some informal conversations with the room.
Go for it.
Ooh, how do you sum up one last thought? I definitely want to answer any of the tactical questions as we do coffee here after, and if there's online questions, definitely send them through, and happy to get into that. I know we've kept it kind of high level and philosophical, but my feeling is that there's too little training on mindset and like personal health and the journey of the startup that requires you, the human, to be in a healthy place. So I talk a lot about mindset. I guess my one thing would be in that same vein, which is as you're going on this journey, like have fun. The thing I try to tell the team all the time, and I've had to tell myself, is like, you actually have nothing to lose. And for me, that came when I realized that even if this whole thing fails or failed, past tense, if it fails, what am I left with? I'm left with 10 unbelievable years, learning more than I possibly could have learned in any other environment, surrounded by the best people I've met. That's a win. Like, it could be 0, and that's a huge win. And then once you start thinking that way, it's like you play free. I was a golfer, and there's like being tense and swinging loose. If you swing loose, that ball's going 300 yards. You're gonna look great down the middle of the fairway. If you're tensed up and you're thinking about like, oh, I'm in the lead, and if I just par this hole, I could win the tournament. Guess where the ball's going? Way left into the woods, right? So have fun. Like, understand you got nothing to lose. It's an amazing journey. So that's my last piece.
Thank you.
So mine is going to be more on sales. One of my software companies I had in San Diego, I was very fortunate to have a billionaire on my board who had a lot of experience. He was one of the first people to figure out the MP3 technology and launch the Rios and things like that, and he worked with Motorola. And I built out this software, and I'm not a tech guy. I just knew how to put a team together, and I was super obsessed about like, you got to build this next feature and this next feature and this next feature, and then I'm going to push it, and then we're going to sell more. He's like, look, sit down, take a deep breath, and he told me like, there's two things you need to know. There's fit to spec and fit to sell. I go, what does that mean? He goes, well, as a creator, as a founder, as a startup, you have all these specs, these ideas like this. It should have this feature, this thing. It should be able to do that. And let's say there's 10 of them, right? I can't possibly sell unless all 10 of them are built. He goes, that's fit to spec. And he goes, right now you're telling me you want to build 3 more features, even though you have existing customers that are paying you money. You've already validated a product. And you're telling me you can't scale this, you can't sell more because you want to build those last 2 things so your checklist of 10 is complete. I go, that's exactly right. He goes, well, you're exactly wrong. I go, what do you mean? He goes, you have fit to spec, which is the visionary, the idea. It's like there's always more to build. There's always one more thing you can do. There's always that. But that shouldn't stop you from taking action today. He goes, you have 3 out of the 10 features that people have validated with their money. They throw money at you to say, yes, shut up and take my money. I want your stuff. He goes, that's fit to sell. You have something that's fit to sell. The moment you have something that's fit to sell, go sell it. The market is your friend. It's brutal. It's your friend. It will tell you if you're on the right track or not. So just remember, if you ever feel stuck, if you ever feel tense, are you obsessed about the fit to spec, or do you have something you can go sell today, which is fit to sell? Those are my thoughts.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jonathan,
Thanks for
your
having me.
time,
Yeah.
of course, and all of your learnings. This was really important. We talked a lot about the heart. We talked a lot about tactically, like selling, like how it's also important to like stop focusing on faux amis and fake friends. Fake friends being the lagging indicator instead of the leading indicator. Am I? Yeah. I'm always afraid of mixing the two, but you really should not mix up the two. So thank you very much for sharing all of these. We're now going to have an in-person time for deeper questions. Thank you to everybody who has been watching online. Thank you to everybody who's watching the replay right now. I would like to also give a special thanks to the technical team, so Paul, Nathan, and Gabriel, for helping that put it up, and for Emma for helping me organize this and going into the audience to gather questions. And if you want to spend more time with experts like Jonathan and entrepreneurs like Michael, the Incubateur HEC Paris opens its applications on the beginning of February, so stay tuned to apply to the incubator. And the next Doers to Doers is going to be about diversity and how to make difference in your team work. So how to include people that are from another background than you, because you have global clients. You need people from like a lot of places with a lot of different backgrounds, and you have to like get them work together and stick together. So how do you do that? That is going to be the subject of the next Doers to Doers on the 9th of February. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.